So finally, Lex Luthor arrives in town to confront Superman and Lois. Well, this is an interesting thing. Obviously, they've already established that this version of Tyler Hoechlin's Superman is another Earth. It's not the Arrowverse Superman. Of course, his Lex Luthor, which I don't know if they ever actually met between the two of them, was played by Jonathan Cryer, who went more for the small, sniveling, polar opposite of Superman, sniveling little worm. Which kind of, well, not kind of, I think that pretty much was the approach that Zack Snyder did with Jesse Eisenberg. And the problem there is I didn't like the performance. I thought Eisenberg's take was too much akin to wanting to play the Joker. And Lex Luthor is not the Joker. He is not psychotic. He's obsessive about his hatred of Superman, but he's not psychotic. But I understand the desire to make that he's the polar opposite of Superman, and that he wouldn't be physically imposing, but he would be very, very intelligent, and that's really what makes him dangerous and all that. But I have to admit, the influence of the animated series in the 90s of that Lex Luthor was just so impressive, and could see that going a long way. So it's between the two these days of how that works out. A sort of, a really twisted little worm of a man is more akin to Dr. Savannah from the Captain Marvel Shazam stories. But interestingly enough, for him in the movie, they cast Mark Strong, who did a good job in it. He was a sinister, villainous guy, and that was more of the approach of the New 52, where they made Dr. Savannah, more akin to, basically another Lex Luthor, really. And I think that's part of the problem. But, a creepy little dude might have been better. Mark Strong would make a great Lex Luthor. He was a great Sinestro, but of course the movie flopped. But, he's just a really good actor, and it's just unfortunate that that's a missed opportunity there. So Michael Cudlitz, I wasn't sure about. The last time I saw him was in The Walking Dead and all that. And I didn't know how they were going to do this. I figured he'd be, he's a bigger dude. He would be a bit more brutal. And he is. And he's a very intimidating man. He's not a sniveling worm. So the setup here is that, Lois was able to get the story that put Lex Luthor away. And it's been 17 years that he was in prison. And it turns out he is an evil bastard and he really deserved the punishment, but the crime that she caught him on, he did not commit. That was a frame-up by Bruno Mannheim. And so, guess who's getting out? So Luthor, we see him, and for the entire episode, he takes a walk. And there's flashbacks to his time in prison. And another interesting thing about it is that, Lex Luthor has always been, for the most part, depicted as bald, even though originally he wasn't. And that's the interesting thing here, is that this is kind of a combination of the original Lex Luthor and the Lex Luthor everyone knows, that he was a redheaded guy. And that's how he appeared for a few issues in the Golden Age era of original Superman comics, where he's this mad scientist guy and all that. And then eventually, just all of a sudden, they reintroduced him with a completely bald head. And that was that, for the most part. And, he started noticing it falling out and figured, let's just shave it. Here, Cudlitz has his own hair. It looks like it, because I never noticed him that he had any receding hairline or a bald spot or anything. Well, maybe he does. But they just decided, hey, for the role, I'm just going to shave it. And so he does in the episode, but not before he brutally destroys the guy who owned the shears, So when he goes to prison, he takes it completely over, because even though he was locked up, his organization, because he's still a billionaire, still exists. You would think maybe Superman should have looked into that. But, yeah, it's hard work and stuff, and there's other things to worry about, earthquakes and fires and whatnot. And, of course, his own brother wanting to invade the Earth and all that. So, anyway, Luthor still had his guys who extorted the warden by threatening to murder his family if he didn't obey Luthor's orders. And so Luthor eventually becomes the real boss of the prison, and everybody obeys his orders and all that. And so he decided to shave his head. Of course, when you shave your head, it's an easier way, because if you're going to cut your own hair, it's not easy to do, and sometimes you get it wrong. I mean, I speak from experience. But, one surefire way is to just shave it. It'll grow back, and for a while, you'll just have this short haircut until it gets too long again. And you know what? You shave it again. So apparently that's the Lex Luthor plan. Of course, the original story goes to Superboy comics when Lex Luthor and Superboy were best buddies in Smallville. And Lex Luthor was going to make a cure for kryptonite for Superboy. But then there was a fire that broke out in his lab, and then Superboy came in and put it out with his super breath, but then it blew the chemicals into Lex's hair and it made it fall out. So, you made my hair fall out. I'll never forgive you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to destroy you, Superboy. And that's how he became Superboy's arch villain. Yeah, that's a stupid reason to do that. I mean, at some point you would think Luthor would find a way to make Superman's hair fall out, There, we're even, But, they came up with other reasons since then. So, but anyway, it is interesting that he bears more resemblance. Some of the depictions of Golden Age Luthor, last time he was seen was in The Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Brainiac just wiped him out. But he was there in a prison uniform, with his full head of red hair and all that. And they say, we only need one Luthor, so they got rid of that one. So I don't know if there was any thinking to that, but it kind of looked the way. And then the rest of it is the ongoing soap operas. There's trouble with Jordan getting a little too full of himself, because he said, "Hey, I'm doing good deeds," but they didn't want him to be found out. But he's made the news now. Of course, they don't know it's him. He's wearing his disguise and all that, but he likes getting all the attention. And Clark says, that's not the reason you do this, and all that. Now, some of it, they probably overreacted to him a little bit and kind of pushed this into this scenario that happened. But it is what it is. Meanwhile, his brother is having problems at work because ever since Kyle found out that Clark's Superman, he's been treating Jonathan with kid gloves. And he's like, hey, I don't need this type of treatment. So then Clark goes over and talks to Kyle about it. But then Kyle calls in Jonathan, hey, man, you got a problem with me, you come to me. You don't run to your daddy about it. He's like, oh, yeah, damn it. And then, of course, Sarah said, hey, told her mom that Jordan's bragging about being Superboy. And he said, oh, that's troubling. So she runs over and talks to Clark and Lois. So they call him in. And then he's mad at Sarah for talking about that, And then Sarah's becoming quite a snot here lately, So anyway, the kids are all pissed off and mad. And, mad at mommy and daddy and all that. But it really matters when Jordan is because, he's got powers. And, that could be a problem. And given the time, it would be interesting if Luthor would try to manipulate that situation, But they have a shortened final season for the fourth one. And probably don't have a lot of time to do that, so that's unfortunate. But at least you get it, so hopefully they can come up with a good send-off for a really nice show. So they establish how brutal and cruel he is in one episode, and he gets all the way, he just on foot walks to Smallville and confronts the Kents and threatens Lois and all this. And he's wanting her to retire from journalism, because he figured that would be the hardest thing for her to do and that kind of thing. And if she doesn't, there'll be hell to pay. And so he blames her for the years he lost. He had a daughter, has lost her apparently, because she wants nothing to do with him. Over crime he didn't commit, even though he's committed God knows how many, and it still is. But that's the deal. And seems to indicate that maybe he had something to do with her cancer. That's what I got from it. I'm not sure. It kind of went over their heads, but anyway. So, Clark, you better leave. But so I thought, does Luthor know that Clark is Superman? And appears he doesn't. So anyway, Otis shows up. And this is kind of a nod to New 52, because there was an Otis in that too, but then I think it was Bizarro who killed him there. But Luthor finds Bizarro in the sewers. He's been feeding on rats because Bizarro is basically a zombie now. And so then Luthor fed him Otis. And that's how the show ended. So there you go. Luthor's got a Bizarro. Even though in a roundabout way that was usually the case, more times than not, it was Luthor who created Bizarro. But this time around, not so much. But he's sticking his nose into what Bruno Mannheim was up to, and now Bruno's incarcerated. So, but seems like, surely they'll make some nod that he would make an attempt on Bruno as well, because really Bruno is the reason he got locked up. But anyway, so that was a good introduction of the character. I didn't know what to think of what Michael Cudlitz would do, but he did very well. He's a really evil bastard, and he's pissed and all that stuff. So it's interesting to see this take on Luthor, which sure has been done before, like in the cartoons and everything, but never quite like this in live action, I don't think. And a very far cry from John Cryer, and for the better, I think. So anyway, there we go. They got a Luthor for Superman and Lois.